Hey, Lemon Nation. It's your girl, Reecie Colbert, filling in for Don Lemon, who is off somewhere being fabulous on vacation. But never fear, we still have a great show planned for you today to walk you all through what's next now that the big, beautiful, we call it bullshit bill has passed. So, joining me to walk us through this conversation, y'all's favorite producer, Peter. Hey, Peter.
Hey guys.
And I would love to introduce you all to my good friend. She rocks it with me every Saturday on my show, the Reecie Colbert on Sirius XM. She is the founder of the Reframe Brain podcast, the wellness community, and political commentator extraordinaire, Erica Savage. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, Reecie. Hello, Lemon Nation. Hi, Peter. Hey, Lemonheads. It's so good to be with you all today, particularly on this historic passage of this bill. Yeah.
Yeah, today is a day that will go down in infamy. And I think that nobody summed it up better of what we're going to call what happened today than Leader Jeffries, who broke the record for longest House speech in modern history. He did not have time to prepare, but he still stood up there for 8 hours and 36 minutes or 30 something minutes. No interruption. It's not like he could do the my friend, pass the baton. He spoke for 8 hours and some change. Let's hear what Leader Jeffries called what happened today on the House floor.
And as a result of the all-out Republican assault on health care in the United States of America, people will die. Tens of thousands. Perhaps year after year after year, as a result of the Republican assault on the health care of the American people. I'm sad. I never thought that I'd be on the House floor saying that this is a crime scene. And House Democrats want no part of it. No part of it. It's a crime scene going after the health and the safety and the well-being of the American people. And Mr. Speaker, we want no part of it.
Woo, Peter, we were talking in our editorial meeting, and what did you call the Republican Party right now?
It's a death cult, Reecie. It is a death cult. And it's so curious, right? Because Republicans pride themselves. They like to get up on their high horse. They like to act holier than thou when talking about the issue of abortion, and pretend that they are the party of life, the party that actually cares about the quote-unquote sanctity of life. And yet the more that you learn about this bill, the more you'll come to understand that it's almost like this entire political movement worships at the altar of death itself. 51,000 preventable deaths annually are likely going to, according to some estimates, are going to take place because of the impacts of this legislation. 17 million Americans are going to lose healthcare coverage.
Yeah.
Rural hospitals are going to disappear. If you live in red America, if you are the constituents of the lawmakers who actually voted for this bill, you're very likely no longer going to have access to surgeries, access to the top medical practitioners in your state. It is depraved, this legislation. And the last thing I'll say, Reecie, is recently, if folks have been watching the show throughout the week, you'll recall how I've been talking about this one conversation that Don had with Jonathan Cohn over at the Bulwark. And as Don and I were preparing for that chat, I had advised Don, let's ask a question that's a little hyperbolic. Let's ask a question that Jonathan is probably gonna dodge, or maybe his answer will be watered down, but ask him, is it an exaggeration to say that this bill, soon to be law, will kill people? And Jonathan Crone, who is a very straight-laced reporter, who is super serious, not at all prone to hyperbole, said straight to camera, yes, this bill is going to kill Americans, and a lot of Americans at that.
And it will be slow and painful. It will be through preventable diseases. It will be through not having food security. I mean, this is so detrimental. I saw a comment flash about how there will be 5 hospitals lost in Missouri. We've already had a hospital announce I believe it was Nebraska or Kansas, somebody can correct me, that they're going to be closing as a result of Medicaid cuts. And so, Erica, a lot of times when people hear Medicaid cuts, they think, I got insurance. I pay for my insurance. I got insurance through my job. I'm gonna be all right. Not really recognizing, and I've said this many times, that Medicaid provides stability, a stable customer base. It provides revenue for hospitals that then make it either profitable enough or feasible or break even point enough to operate in all of our communities. And so without Medicaid recipients, without people being able to go to the doctor and get an OBGYN appointment or go to the doctor and get their kids checked up for their annual checkups, those doctors don't have the revenue base there to serve everybody.
Absolutely. And I want to say, Reecie, with regard to that, welcome to the Hunger Games. This is what Republicans have ushered in, literally, the Hunger Games. And what you and Peter have laid out impacts all of us. And so this whole idea of individualism has definitely been slashed because we're all going to feel the pains. It's going to make it that much more difficult for states to be able to justify what their priorities are. And so imagine if a red state, Nebraska, you just mentioned Kansas, has to say, well, in order for us to be able to save money, we're going to have to close a hospital. Then what do we think is going to happen in terms of crime? What do we think is going to happen in terms of housing costs? How is that going to attract developers? How is that going to attract other people from coming inside of a particular state, a particular community, when they're looking at, well, their problems around taking care of people has definitely not been remedied. It's definitely something that has been exacerbated in terms of not being able to keep up with the cost of the cost of taking care of those individuals. It impacts all of us. And then when we're thinking about the incoming Republican recession that has been ushered in by the OBBA, all of these things impact all of us, no matter what your zip code, no matter what your net worth is in your particular state, it impacts all of us.
Yes. Peter, you touched on some of the things that this bill is going to do. There was a great 90-second roundup that somebody did. It was Philip DeFranco. Let's play that so that people could just get a high level view, if you haven't seen it already, what this bill does.
The Republican Senate just passed Trump's big, beautiful bill today, which has been described as the worst bill in the history of the United States. And it very much appears, as Elon said, they're now casting you into a future of being a debt slave. Or for many of you, they're throwing your future away, locking in being the first generation in American history that will live a life that is harder than the one that your parents lived. According to experts, it looks like nearly 20 million people are going to lose their health care due to Medicaid cuts, and your health care premiums will rise by $26,000 a year. They're ending food assistance for the poor and have sentenced rural hospitals to death. I mean, you had Democrats proposing an amendment to the bill to make sure that veterans, kids, and the homeless aren't denied food assistance, and Republicans voted against it. They blocked it. And so you have critics of the bill out there saying, the air that we breathe, it's going to be smoggy and unbreathable because they're killing renewables and investing in burning coal again. The power blackouts are going to become a more normal affair in America, and you're going to have to pay more for that power as well. And now whites, who many have said are acting like a secret police, are going to have secret police-like numbers thanks to the bill. Many of you watching are also going to have to pay more in taxes than you did last year, but also, think of the billionaires who get their break in taxes. Or at least that's a positive. And hey, I'll get some pushback now, but in the future, when you're slowly watching your parents die of cancer or Alzheimer's, make sure to thank Republicans and Donald Trump for not only getting rid of breakthrough cures, but also making sure that they had no health care. And on that list of people you can thank Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who got her state exempt from all of this bullshit in order to vote for it. Right? And that is, her defense for voting for it is that she hopes that the House doesn't pass it. Y'all, they fucking tricked half the population. But hey, for now, follow to stay in the loop.
Woo, okay. So we see what the Republicans just did. We saw what Leader Jeffries said. Democrats want no parts of it. Let's see how the Republicans feel about passing this bill.
Did vote yes.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
USA is now going to be a damn third world country thanks to this big ugly ass bill. That's why, Peter, when I see headlines like what was in the Atlantic,
Mm,
that suggests, and here's the headline: no one loves the bill almost every Republican voted for, but they didn't want to anger the president. When I see, and it's no shade to Russ or whoever, not always the writer writes the headlines. No shade to them, but I do not fucking buy it for 1 second
Mm.
that Republicans do not love the carnage that
right.
this bill will bring upon the American people. They love this shit. They were just cheering, hooting and hollering, chanting USA. So we need to stop allowing Republicans to hide under the cloak of the evilness that is Donald Trump and that he is such a big bully. And, we just don't want to anger Trump, or we don't want to anger the MAGA people. This is who the Republican Party is. When Maya Angelou says, when they show you who they are, believe you. They have shown the American people that this is who they are and this is what they stand for.
Yeah, a couple of things to say. First, I thought Philip DeFranco was pitch perfect. I take issue, I quibble with his rather flippant use of the term debt slave, but otherwise I think he was pretty much on point throughout that entire monologue, just laying top to bottom many of the more horrific aspects to this bill. But to address what you were saying directly, Reecie, what confounds me is the fact that, as you just saw, as these Republican lawmakers are cheering, as they're chanting USA on the House floor, they know full well that the folks who are going to be hurt most by this legislation is their very own voters. It's their relatives, it's their friends, it's their family members. Maybe not in all cases. Maybe it's not like the folks at the country club that they hobnob with. But overwhelmingly, it's the folks who do live in their states, who live in their communities, who are now, again, not to be a broken record, are not going to be able to go to a hospital in their rural communities, who are not going to be able to access healthcare. And so I'm thinking about what you said about how, in pushing back on this Atlantic headline, the Republicans know full well what they're voting for. I suppose I agree with you, I guess, but the only way that I can rationalize it is that Republicans have just pushed out of their mind the knowledge that they're hurting their voters first and foremost, and they're just viewing this as an us versus them, Republican versus Democrat way to own the libs. By passing this legislation, by hurting people, they know liberals will get upset, and that's what they want to do. It's all ultimately about cultural grievance. I tweeted this earlier today, but I said 17 million Americans are about to lose their healthcare coverage because the green M&M took off her go-go boots. Right? We are about to have a secret police in this country because Disney put a black man in a stormtrooper uniform. Okay? We're about to have all these rural hospitals closed because a trans woman dared to drink a Bud Light in a TV ad. All of this is just, it's cultural grievance manifesting in the most toxic, deranged, bizarre way. And again, it's the MAGA people who are going to be hurt most. That's what's so crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, Peter, you're right. Basically, the hatred and the bigotry and the grievance that has arisen out of it, the unhinged grievance, has given a permission slip to do these things. In addition to the attack that they've had on trans people, the attack that they've had on DEI and all these other things, it has given them the permission slip to have a full-scale attack on the entire country. Erica, what are your thoughts?
I want to drop the A in the DEI accessibility because it is Disability Pride Month. And we're talking about now 35 years since the passage during a Republican administration of the Disability Act, which laid the groundwork for not being able to discriminate against people with disabilities in all facets of life. And so you now have Republicans who we have known long to be one in lockstep in with whatever their Lord and Master says, that says, with regard to all of those people that voted for us based on propaganda, thank you. We will continue to enrich ourselves. We will continue to be the #1 welfare recipients in the country. We will continue to fight, and we will continue to push for billionaire tax cuts, even if that raised the debt ceiling. They have been very, very clear that they don't care. Because I believe that, and I said this, and Reecie, you and I have talked about this across other mediums of political commentary, that if there is a vote in 2028, if there is a vote, Republicans play the long game. And that
Yeah.
has also been talked about around Representative Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, as he's pushing at looking at reconciliations for 26 and 27. So again, I would say to all of those individuals that thought that they were proving a point by not voting, who thought that they were standing on some type of moral ground, well, the ground just got quicksand adjacent. And here we are.
Yeah. I want to get to the long game part because I want to get to the timeline of when these things hit. But I would be remiss in not pointing out how much of a cheap date these so-called Republican holdouts were. The ones that gave us the drama, gave us the theater of their indignation about the Medicaid cuts, or in some cases, that the cuts weren't deep enough. There are reports that, the holdouts were summoned to the White House yesterday, and they were entertained by the president. And these cheap hoes were bought off with some merchandise. Now, we know how ugly them ugly ass Make America Great hats are. I don't care if it's a red Make America Great hat, green, black, whatever. Now they got the little white ones, I guess, because of summer. That ugly ass doggone free merchandise was all that it took for these cheap hoes to hand over their votes. Not any promise of you're going to get a bridge in your community, or you're going to get a new facility built. These cheap hoes didn't even get a steak dinner out of it. They just got a MAGA hat. That's it. And for that, this says lousy free merch, for the lousy price of a fucking ugly ass made in China MAGA hat, these people sold out hundreds of thousands of their own constituents to vote for this bill. How pitiful and pathetic is that?
You know what this reminds me of, Reecie? Tim Miller, who's a good friend to the Don Lemon Show, has this saying that is, the key to understanding Washington, the key to understanding American politics, is remembering at all times that it's not House of Cards, it's not the West Wing, it's Veep. The idea that these lawmakers can be swayed by some Temu baseball caps, like some $3 pieces of garbage that were sewed together by probably children in sweatshops, just makes my blood boil. It would be funny if it weren't so enraging.
Yeah, Erica, I wonder if they threw in some of that cheap smelling perfume and cologne that Trump is selling now. Did they much?
I was just about to bring that up. The notes are nowhere near lovely. The Trump victory 45-47 mustiness that he is. I'm certain he didn't, because he's selling it for an overinflated price. And this is another thing that Republicans have introduced into the American place of pain that we're experiencing right now. We're going to be experiencing higher inflation costs. We're going to be experiencing higher rates for people that are attempting to get auto loans. We're also going to be experiencing, for those people that are looking to further their education, it's going to be less money that's borrowed, and only two options for those people that borrow money for repayment plans. They're also going to be taking out the hardship a piece that would allow people to not have to pay back immediately, to forbear in case of economic hardships. So this is who the Republicans are. Again, they are absolutely the top welfare recipients of this country, save the billionaires.
I'm glad you mentioned the part about the student loans, because that's a part that hasn't been talked about as much. I did a video the other day where I broke down some of it, but one of the things that I didn't get a chance to break down. So I talked about, and you just mentioned it, how there's new student income driven plans that are more punitive. You could be paying up to 30 years before you get any kind of forgiveness, whereas the SAVE plan, which was under the Biden-Harris administration, you can get forgiveness in as little as 10 years. And then you already mentioned the deferments are much more stringent. And but another part was the parent side of it. So, many parents end up taking out loans to send their kids to college. And so now that part has been scaled back. So now that parents can't, there are different rules and more restrictions on that for parents getting loans. That's going to make it harder for people to go to grad school. And so this bill, in addition to trying to remake the who gets access to healthcare, remake who gets to put food on their table, it also wants to remake access to higher education. It wants to make it so much harder for you to be able to take out a loan. And then when you get that loan, you have to pay it back sooner because of the deferments are more strict. You have to pay more money and you have to pay over a longer period of time. If that is, again, if you even get to take a loan out. So that's an important part. Somebody mentioned, I saw a comment about BBB, Build Back Better. This is so disgusting that this, around this time in the first the last administration, we were debating, maybe a year later, we were debating Build Back Better. And that would have been the largest social remaking of society in a better way. It would have made the child tax credit, which cut child poverty in half for a year, permanent. It would have made all these investments in childcare to make it more affordable and just so many other things. That couldn't get a vote in the Senate. However, now what Donald Trump and his MAGA-lights have been able to do is pass the biggest slash of the social safety nets. But I know people are curious about the timeline. So let's walk through when this bill gets implemented. So, when we're talking about this bill's range, a lot of it is scored over the next 5 to 10 years. So there are several things that aren't actually going to go into effect immediately, and some things are going to go into effect immediately. So the tax cuts, when it comes to the tax cuts, the higher standardized deduction starts with this tax year. So when you file in 2026, you will get to take advantage of that. The no tax on tips and overtime starts in this year as well. So your 2026 filing, you get to take advantage. There are a lot of asterisks on the no tax on tips. It's capped at $25,000 for tips, and I think $12,000 for overtime. It's capped at your income level. And then there are all these different ways, loopholes for where you actually do get taxed on it. And then your state and local tax cap increase starts in 2025. Now I'm gonna celebrate that because I was getting killed by salt. I know that people like to say that it's for the wealthy homeowners. I ain't wealthy. My home ain't worth a whole bunch, but I did get killed by that salt cap. So okay, score one for the Republicans, even though they're the ones that put the cap in place in the first beginning. Okay. Now, the food stamp work requirements. So this is going to be something that is rolled out over time. So it could hit as early as this year. So one of the ways that the savings, quote unquote, are identified in this bill and the cuts is not necessarily by saying in every case, we're going to take X number of dollars out of this program. What it does is it puts in requirements that weed out people who are eligible. It puts in, so it makes people who are currently eligible ineligible, and it also makes it harder for people to prove their eligibility. So they might actually be eligible, but now it's going to be harder for them because they have all these additional documents they have to fill out. The process is longer, it's more difficult, which we know people get dissuaded if things take too long to do. And then I read before that it doesn't go retroactively as long as the status quo is. So that's something that will start in 2025. There are new rules on health insurance that will start in 2026. The Medicaid work requirements for most states are going to start in December 2026. So that will be after the election in next year. So don't let anybody run next year saying, well, nobody's been kicked off of Medicaid yet. The Democrats said that all these millions of people are going to lose Medicaid and that hasn't happened yet. Well, that's because it won't be implemented in time for that. Okay. Medicaid and food stamp funding changes will start in 2028. So, like I said, they're going to get some savings and cuts will happen through changing eligibility, but then they're going to explicitly cut funding starting in 2028. That's going to be an election year. And then another big aspect of point of contention between the House and the Senate was clean energy cuts, which are supposed to end this year. So September 30th, 2025 is the end of this fiscal year. Then home energy credits are going to end the end of this year as well. So that's the headline, the big timeline. Everything won't be implemented immediately. There will be a delayed pain that will come from this, but I will say some of these dates that are kind of putting things far out, what's going to happen, because the states administer these programs, the states are going to start, in anticipation of these things coming into effect, doing things like changing eligibility, changing their budgeting process, changing taxes potentially within their state. So even this, I would say the effective dates or the timeline probably is the latest that we will start to see changes as opposed to the earliest. Peter, I see you shaking your head. What?
No, it's also dark.
Yeah.
It's also dark. And Reecie, there's one thing that this did not cover. You and I were chatting about this rather on our editorial call. What folks should be aware of, and I think this has flown somewhat under the radar. Philip DeFranco did touch on it very briefly in that video that we played towards the top of the show. But this bill provides some $170 billion, that's billion with a B, not million, $billion for immigration enforcement and detention. Now, I want to hone in on that just a little bit. Because you'd think, okay, well, you know what? Our country has had some immigration troubles. I could see certain areas where we could, use some reform, use some new funding, make the process more smoothly. Let's break down what Trump wants to do. So in that $170 million, $45 billion goes to building new detention centers and jails. Some people are calling them, I'm inclined to agree, concentration camp light, specifically Alligator Alcatraz, that literally has merchandise now down in Florida. That $45 billion, that's a 265 increase in the current ICE detention budget. Not only that, but circling back to the $170 billion, that will turn ICE into the single largest federal law enforcement agency in the history of the country. These are the masked guys who don't have to identify themselves, who do not have to show a warrant, who can just pull up in the middle of the street, throw you into the back of the van, and take you away. I think Philip DeFranco in that video called them Trump's new secret police force. I don't really think that's that hyperbolic. I don't know about you, Reecie.
No, I don't think that it is. I mean, and let's go back to just a couple of weeks ago with Brad Lander, who was the New York City. He's an elected official, a comptroller, was arrested by ICE. ICE does not have jurisdiction over U.S. citizens, and yet he was arrested anyway. And so I think it is absolutely accurate to call them the secret police, because jurisdiction or not, if they can arrest you, if they can physically detain you, that is a deputized police force, right, Erica?
Yeah, it absolutely is, which is why I started calling him 6 years ago the son of a Klansman. He is absolutely living up to his father's legacy. And when we think about the horror and the terror campaign that this administration, as Steve Bannon said in their first CPAC appearance in 2018, right across the bridge in Maryland, that their whole goal was to deconstruct the administrative state. We are watching this carnage in real time, and they are only going to continue to amp it up, and they're only going to continue to move forward. When I think about what they did during COVID-19, what they did during the pandemic, that we lost 1 million American bodies, and that there were reports that over 300,000 lives could have been saved if this regime, would have acted promptly and not continue to lift conspiracy theories and move forward with allowing people to really kind of regulate what way that they would respond and not have not ensure that there was a one message around to prevent the spreading of COVID, then we would have been seeing a lot less people that were in long-term health conditions than we do now. So when we see, as you all talk about this secret police, when we see the unleashing of continuing to make sure that the country is a slave-holding country, when we see that people, instead of going back to the countries from which they actually came to America for asylum for, are actually held here and forced into labor, it then makes sense why the United States is still and will remain, as Peter talked about, ICE being the #1 federal funded entity in United States history. It then makes sense why, even before this regime, now it's going to be all that more underscored that the United States will continue and remain the #1 country to hold bodies incarcerated, and that is both with children and with adults.
And if I may, Reece, just quickly cut in, because Erica, picked up on something that you and I chatted about this morning.
Yeah.
And that is MAGA's apparent new fascination with what I'm calling neo-slavery, or slavery with extra steps. You played a great video. You played a great video this morning of Trump talking about how farmers are going to have quote unquote owner responsibility over certain undocumented migrants who will be allowed to stay in this country and work for them, but won't be granted citizenship or citizenship rights. I mean, talk about saying the quiet part out loud, quote unquote, owner responsibility. Are you kidding me?
You know, the thing about it is, and Clay and I continue that conversation a little bit, they already have access to these laborers, right? I mean, like farmers disproportionately had undocumented migrants there. So they already had access to labor. So Donald Trump putting this out there like, oh, it's a win-win situation. I'm not saying the situation was working before, but there were people of their own volition who went to work on the farms and the farmers employed them. But what was missing was the ownership part. I mean, if you look at the fact that our prisons are essentially indentured servitude as well, you know, we have the ability, it's just slavery by another name, neo-slavery, as you put. You might be onto something there. Neo-slavery. That's scary. But
if I'm coined in Wikipedia for coming up with that term, my parents will not be proud of me.
I was thinking like, I don't know if you want credit for that, but that's a good way of explaining it as a messed up situation. But they want the ownership part. They're getting a kick, like you said, the alligator Alcatraz merchandise, the catchy name for a detention center, a concentration camp. They want that part of it. That is, like I've said many times, we could have had all of Trump's policies with the Nikki Haley, with the Ron DeSantis, but they wanted that theater. They wanted that extra entertainment shock value that they could just feast on.
Yeah, it's Adam Serwer wrote an essay, a famous essay in The Atlantic during the first Trump term. I want to say this was in 2017, maybe 2018. And its title has almost become trite at this point. It's almost become a meme.
Yeah.
It was "The Cruelty is the Point." Because at the time it was kind of controversial. Trump had not truly, I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but he hadn't like quite become president yet. Everything seemed rather wanton, rather slapdash. It was chaotic, but it didn't seem like Trump was purposely trying to commit evil. By this point in his second term, we know it's cruelty. We know that these people just want to inflict pain on the most marginalized folks in America, whether they be undocumented, whether they be black, brown, trans, gay. They just want to unleash psychic terror. I know now I sound like Marianne Williamson, but psychic terror on liberals on a daily basis. It's just, and that's sort of a fancy, highfalutin way of saying they want to own the libs. They just want to own the libs, and they want to drink their liberal tears every single morning for breakfast. And that's the hellish reality we now live in.
Yeah, you know, but they're cruel, they're insidious, and the cruelty is the point. But there's also a profit motive. You talked about
Mm.
the hundreds of billions of dollars now that we're going to be spending private prisons, which I'm sure you probably know it's like Palantir is an investor, and there are all these billionaires that are investing in private prisons. And Representative Melanie Stansbury, she called out her Republican peer in the House who is in way profiting from the passage of this bill. There's an account that's tracking the stock transactions of Congress people, and Representative Robert Bresnahan, he sold off, reportedly, allegedly sold off his Centene stock. Centene provides healthcare exchanges for Medicaid. After the passage of this bill, the stock has fallen 43% since this sale. So he dumped the stock, according to this is what Congresswoman Stansbury said. This congressman literally dumped stock in a Medicaid provider company right before this bill came to the floor. Don't be fooled. These guys know exactly what they're doing. They are buying insider trade. I'm not going to say he's insider trading, but I would say that there is obviously an advantage to having the knowledge that, hey, this bill is going to pass today and 17 million people are going to lose their health care as a result of this bill. I should dump this stock. Right, Erica? Yeah. I mean, I think it's plain as day.
It's very much so plain as day. We saw this at the advent of the pandemic. We saw those senators, we saw those people that were in Congress that were greatly incentivized and that did well during one of the most hideous times in our modern day history with relation to how this global pandemic impacted us within this country. But I also just want us to be reminded that when we think about what Republicans are walking lockstep with, that you're talking about a regime that is led by an individual who was sued, he and his father, by the Nixon campaign decades ago. And so his great angst, his great hatred, his great way of ensuring that he is enriched, to ensuring that people will pay, to ensuring that those individuals that are in wealthy classes like him and himself are taken care of. You know, he has had a long history with what it means to actually engage with the federal government and have the federal government come against you. So one of the other things that I also want us to think about as well is that Republicans, as you talked about when we were discussing Speaker Mike Johnson, is that they do play the long game. And so this, for me, reads the regime, Trump regime, really getting their lick back and making sure that they are enshrined in history as bringing back the days of old when there was very clear ownership.
Yeah.
The days of old when there was a clear delineation between the haves and the have-nots. So to think that Republicans are not going to be celebrating July the 4th with another level of excitement, I want people to be very much so, be very warned. This is their celebration, but there's much more terror ahead for everyone else, whatever your political affiliation is, for the whole of the country. Because, you know, Peter's talked about owning the libs, and absolutely, that is something that they definitely enjoy across social media posts. But outside of the fake reality of social media, people living in trailers, people that are living in apartment complexes, people that are living in homes, people that are living wherever it is that they live are going to be paying the price, except for those that are a part of the 1%. This is about owning America and having that clear delineation between who are the owners and who are the people that are working in the field.
Yeah.
Reecie, can I say one thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please. No, go.
Andy, would you mind tossing up that graphic of the congressman one more time? I'm going to choose my words very carefully here because I don't want to get into trouble.
Yeah.
But his actions have the appearance, let's say, of profiting off the future death and misery of poor
Mm,
people.
mm.
His actions have the appearance of seeking to make money, make a great deal of money
Yep.
upon the pretty accurate prediction that there are a tremendous amount of very underprivileged people, of impoverished people in this country that are going to die soon.
Yeah.
And again, there's an appearance of him making a lot of money off of that.
Yeah.
And it's again, I'm choosing my words very carefully. It has the appearance
Right.
of being absolutely evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. And he's not the only one. I'm not gonna let other people get off the hook. Okay. So last week, Senator, or maybe it was this week. So Senator Tom Tillis, made shockwaves when he announced that he was not running for re-election. Now he has been railing against this bill. He said that, look, we're not gonna be able to defend this. So he's like, I'm out this bitch. Another person has announced that they will be exiting. However, their last act was to vote on this bill, to vote yes on this bill. Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee said that he plans to resign from Congress after this vote. He has announced that July 20th will be his last day on Congress. And you want to know why? Because he got an offer he can't refuse. He has some big, fat private sector job lined up. He's going to line his pockets with these new tax cuts that he probably will be able to take advantage of and go right off into the sunset after voting to take 17 million people's health insurance away. Christie says he is a coward. He is a fucking coward. Every single person who votes on this bill should be obligated to go before their constituents and defend. It's indefensible, but to stand before their constituents and explain themselves. Okay. They should not be able to run off into some private sector job, make 6 figures, hell, it might be 7 figures for all we know, and not be held accountable. This is disgusting that this is your last stand. There's been this narrative, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, that people are so afraid of Trump. Oh, well, we're going to get primaried. Oh, we're going to lose our seats if we vote for this bill. This man had nothing to lose from if he was planning on leaving. He could have said no, and that could have been his final stand. But he stayed for this vote. I wonder whether this fat job offer was tied to this vote and what's in this bill, or if he's just a depraved, fucked up human being. What do you suspect? What does it have the appearance of to you, Erica?
All of the above. Again, when we look at Republicans are very much so about self. And so, as we talk about them being cowards and them being evil, the other thing is that when we look at the, difference between the Democrats and Republicans, Democrats are always explaining why they did or why they did not. While Republicans are holding up the "am I tripping? Who gonna check me, boo?" Hand back and forth. So when we're thinking about in terms of Republicans who are allowed, who have been permitted, who have been given the runway to actually just, well, thanks, I voted, peace out, to say that they are so afraid of Trump, to kind of hide behind this shroud of, what they regret and what they don't regret. I don't know how people that are already making 6 figures that are now going into spaces where they can be making upwards to 7 figures, who have the knowledge and the inner workings of Congress, who have a pipeline from their old job to how the new job will benefit them. I don't know how they're paying a price. So what is the price that Republicans are going to be made to pay? Because social media is not moving the needle. That's not where their pressure comes from. Their pressure, it has to be something that is applied. They should not be allowed to come back into whatever district that they represented and to be comfortable. And that is not a call to violence. That's not a call to make something, to make them unsafe. What it is that they absolutely should not be able to go from Congress to wherever they're going, knowing that they have homes within their district at a comfortable level, that there should be some, why did you do this to us?
Yeah.
Why did you actually take out of our mouths, take out of our states, take out of our districts? And we just don't see that happening with Republicans.
Yeah, I just saw a comment from, I think it's Jason. He says, what changes with the ACA health exchange? What's changed, one of the main things that's changed is, for instance, some provisions. Now, I'm not on the health exchanges, so I've read what it does. Is that it changes like the automatic re-enrollment part, so it makes it more you have to go through more steps to keep your insurance. It's going to change some of the subsidies, if I'm not mistaken, taking some of those subsidies away, so it'll be more expensive to get health exchange insurance. So those are the two that I know off the top of my head. Do either of you know of anything else that jumps out? Okay,
No.
so I do at least know that much. One of the things that I'm kind of torn on saying this next point, but let's take the Republicans at their word. One of the things that came out of all the meetings with Donald Trump and these Republicans was that apparently Donald Trump did not know that this bill slashed Medicaid. He said that he didn't really realize it because one of the comments that he said, allegedly, reportedly, is that you can, if you want to win elections, you can't touch Medicaid and Social Security. And they're like, sir, that's what we're doing with this bill. The idea that they had to do this for Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about the particulars. The only thing Donald Trump cared about was those tax cuts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't absolve him. I think he equally doesn't give a shit about the carnage that this bill does, but he would have taken a $6 trillion deficit impact, which some estimates are saying that will be the impact if these economic projections that were built into the calculations don't actually come to bear. He would have taken $10 trillion deficit in just tax cuts. This bill had a $5 trillion debt ceiling limit. Why do you have to increase it by $5 trillion if you think that this bill is supposed to be a growth for the economy?
If it balances the budget.
Right.
Budget. Why do you need $5 trillion? This man does not care. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about programs. All he cares about is tax cuts. So I'm not buying anybody that wants to say anything about we had to do this for Trump. You did it. You own your vote. Donald Trump owns this because his signature is going to be on it. He pushed for it. He didn't give a damn who it hurt. JD Vance owns this. The 50 other Republican senators that voted for this, they all own this. Every Republican owns this. And I'll tell you who else owns it. The American people who voted or sat their ass on the couch and gave this permission slip. When you did that, when you voted for Trump, when I said it earlier, when the Republicans got the popular vote, in addition to the votes at the district level, at the congressional district level, that all of that is the equivalent of casting the vote for this bill.
Reecie, there's a rather famous, or more accurately, a rather infamous poor choice of words that Nancy Pelosi made, if I'm not mistaken, in the early months of 2010, where Republicans and Fox News had been fear-mongering about what Obama and what House Democrats were going to do to healthcare in this country with the Affordable Care Act, of course, then labeled by Republicans Obamacare, which now Democrats are really happy they did because everyone in the country loves Obamacare. It's a great program.
How about that?
But Nancy Pelosi said in the fog of all of this fear-mongering that, it's going to create death panels and all of these other nonsensical conspiracy theories, she said, we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
Yeah.
Again, poor choice of words, not Mrs. Pelosi's finest work. However, the context here is critical. There had been 8 months of debate and negotiation on the Hill. If I'm not mistaken, I think 3 separate committees had held multiple hearings, public hearings, about the legislation. There was so much time, so much purposeful review of this bill before it was ultimately passed. Now, fast forward to today. I know that the past few weeks have been literally a decade, if not a century. But when the House passed the bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill, big bullshit bill, big deadly bill, and sent it to the Senate, Marjorie Taylor Greene is defending herself on Twitter saying, well, I voted for it because I didn't read it. I didn't realize it had all of these stipulations that prevent states from regulating AI for the next decade. And then when you consider that, unlike with the Affordable Care Act, that, as I said, took about 8 months to craft, this bill was slapped together over the course of like a single weekend. Not debated in the House, just shoved through, passed over to the Senate, debated for a few days, then shoved back to the House, and then sent to the president's desk. It's just mind-boggling to me, the idea that Republicans used to be the party of 1, fiscal responsibility, but then 2, good governance, serious governance, and now they're just not reading shit and just voting for it. We're in the bad place. I suppose that's all I mean to say. We are in the bad place.
Yeah, I agree. Mama Brooks says, why isn't anyone talking about the projected tariff income in the bill? That is also how they are funding wealthy tax breaks, which is a regressive tax. So there isn't tariff income in the bill itself, but the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, did talk about the impact of tariffs. And I know that there's been a lot of talk around this bill basically resulting in a net household income change for, I want to say the numbers that I've seen are like the bottom 30%, but we do have a graphic from the Yale Budget Policy Lab where they do take into account the tariff policy and this big, beautiful bill. When you take into account both of those things, and we have it coming up right now, it shows that the annual change in household resources is going to be negative for 80% of the country. And then if you're in the 90%, you get, what is that, $80? You get $80 more. That's it. Now, mind you, Trump's tariffs, they haven't made any deals yet. They've had, I think they did a big ceremony for a 1-pager, not a deal. There are some things that have been temporarily paused. I think it was 90 days while they work out some deals. No deals are anywhere in the ballpark of being done. And there isn't any evidence that Donald Trump is just going to say, oh, haha, just kidding, we're going to drop all these tariffs. So that is one of the things that Fed Chair Jerome Powell has held out on is, you know, what this tariff impact is going to be. That's why he's not lowering the interest rates. And so the reality is when you take this big, beautiful bill and you marry that up with the tariffs, which is a relatively immediate impact, right? Then you see a net household change in resource that's negative. And then the highest 10%, their income grows. But I think we talked about this earlier. You know, I'm not saying that several $100,000 is not a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But for the income level, it's not that much money. If you're that rich already, this is like, okay, well, I can go, you know, take a Ritz-Carlton yacht cruise with my family. I can go, you know, vacation in St. Tropez. Like, it's that kind of money for them. It's not, it's not life-changing money for them. It's life-changing money when they're cutting SNAP, when they're cutting, you know, when they're making it more expensive to get health insurance, or they cut your insurance, or we haven't even gotten to the president's budget for fiscal year 2026. This is not a spending bill. This is an entitlements bill. That's what you do through the reconciliation. The president's budget has even more carnage in it, to be very clear. So when people say that this is the largest wealth transfer from poor to rich people, poor people don't have wealth. So it's not a transfer of wealth. The money that's being transferred from the poor is not wealth. It is survival. It is their
Yeah.
income. It is their livelihood.
Yeah.
And the money that the wealthy are getting doesn't make them wealthier. It just gives them more lunch money, more pocket change, more vacation money. So this transfer of resources
Yeah.
is not moving the needle for the richest people. It's nice to have. I'm sure they're not going to complain about having more money, but it doesn't move the needle for them in the way that it is dire and detrimental and potentially deadly for millions of people in this country.
Reecie, there was a Gallup poll done earlier this year that found, if I'm not mistaken, 35% of Americans say they had recently skipped either a hospital visit or medical care because they simply could not afford it. Look at the top of that chart, guys. The lowest income 10% of Americans are going to lose some, what, $2,600 because of the one big beautiful bill and the tariffs. Folks could not afford a hospital visit before. Where is that $2,600 going to come from?
Right.
These you're stealing. I mean, Reecie, you just knocked it out of the park a second ago. You're taking money from people who don't have anything to give.
No.
At all.
No. Well, and you know, there's studies that say that people are $500 away from financial ruin, a $500 emergency away from financial ruin. Most people cannot afford that. And Helen says it right here. There's no room for any emergency. Now, look at how many of these percentiles, these deciles, are more than $500. Now, I would argue if you're in the 70th percentile, you probably can afford $500. But these, the lower, you know, fourth percentiles, deciles, are all double or more of what would already cause financial ruin, to your point, Peter. So this is not a wealth transfer. This is a livelihood transfer. Erica?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look at from the wellness perspective, because I do this work on a continual basis, when you look at then now how people who are now struggling with chronic health conditions, when you look at how people standing still from the pandemic, and then people who are, as one of the lemon heads just talked about, people that are living with their parents and their grandparents. And so there's not any real wiggle room for anyone to have an emergency, for anybody to actually move from the state that they are presently in. Well, we know that the epidemic of loneliness is very much so threaded into what people are facing here within the United States. Now, you add on to that the pressures that people are feeling with regard to their job, with providing for their family, and with reports of people are living longer. So within the United States, there's going to be a need for long-term care facilities, particularly around memory care. So when we have the cost of living going up, when we have housing that's not affordable, when it's more expensive for people to grocery shop, for them to get the things that they need, when we have states that are contracting because they're not able to afford hospitals, they're not able to afford quality doctors to come in, they're not able to afford some of the line items that were able to keep their state, cities, townships, municipalities running. And so they're having to make decisions around the welfare of the people, which means the well-being. Welfare is simply the well-being. It's not this horrid word that means that somebody is getting something for nothing, the well-being of that people. Then what does that mean for, as Peter talked about, what Republicans used to be? They used to be this, or what they purported to be was they were this group of family values, of being fiscally conservative. So what does this mean then for people that are in one household? How do you then, what is the cost of people who don't have access to FEMA, property taxes going up, people saying, well, we can't afford to live in this place anymore. So then what does that say for the schools? What does that then say for the children that attend those schools, or schools are closing? When we think about how this actually impacts the entirety of everybody, our neighbors to our left and our right, we're left with, then what does this then mean for the readiness of our country?
Yeah.
Who's going to be able to go into the military? Who's going to be able to, if that's what they elect to, who's going to be able to do things that do require for the whole body to be well, when there are all of these different pieces that are ensuring that the whole body isn't well, that they're not able to go to the doctor because hospitals are not closed, that they don't have access to clinics and things of that nature. So when we look at it that way, that there has been a passage of a bill that absolutely does not care about how this is impacting families, what this is doing for households, there's just another level of depravity that we're really seeing about long term, what it's going to mean for Americans and being well and being ready.
Yeah.
Reecie, if I could, I'd love to toss up this one meme. Andy, I sent it to you a minute ago. This bill, this entire conversation, it has me thinking about this, as I said, this meme that's passed around Twitter quite a bit. For those of you who might be listening on Spotify, it's a graph that shows two different potential election results. On the left, the Democrats are proposing everyone gets a puppy. And on the right, the Republicans are proposing their policy platform is diarrhea forever. And I think this is pretty accurate in describing this situation, except it's diarrhea forever while billionaires hunt you for sport, a la The Most Dangerous Game from 1932. It's so dark. It's such a screwed up situation, and I just can't believe we find ourselves here. It's absurd.
Well, okay, to add to this, right? I voted for diarrhea forever, but I didn't expect that I would get diarrhea forever. I thought that diarrhea was for trans people and migrants and for Black people and for LGBTQ people. And then on the Democratic side, it's people saying, well, you guys lost, so you couldn't stop the diarrhea forever. But why do we have diarrhea? Even though the party that we allowed to be in power ran on giving everybody diarrhea.
Yeah.
That's the state of our politics. It's so disgusting because the reality is diarrhea forever was Project 2025. And Republicans ran on it, Democrats warned your asses, and people still voted for diarrhea forever. Period. So look, we've covered a lot of heaviness. I feel a heaviness on me, but I know that we are here with a wellness extraordinaire guru who knows how to bring us back. And so all of you guys, there are thousands of you on here. Hit the like button, subscribe, make sure that you support all things The Don Lemon Show. The merch store is open. I want Erica to do what I often ask you to do as we head out on the Reecie Colbert Show and what you do with your platform, the Reframe Brain. Let's do a cleansing of the energy. We could go back to doom and gloom and doom scrolling and being angry, but as we go out, and tomorrow's a holiday, I know a lot of people don't feel the need to celebrate, but as we head out, and before you go, tell folks how they can follow you one last time. Let's do what you do best and give us a chance to woosah and just clear the air a little bit from all this heaviness and all this darkness in the country right now.
Absolutely. So I definitely want to thank Don Lemon, the incomparable Don Lemon, for allowing me to be on this platform. Thank you, Peter, for your graciousness. Thank you so much to Andy and Nikki, and thank you, Reecie. To the Lemon Heads, you can connect with me at thereframedbrain.com. That's reframed with an ED, at one Erica Savage, at the Reframed Brain. I do have a memoir that talks about I'm a polytrauma survivor. And so that memoir will be dropping The Fight to Fly July 15th. So you can go to the Reframed Brain to go ahead and pre-order so you can get that. And as a polytrauma person, I talked about chronic health issues. I have a rare disease as a result of being hit by an 18-wheel truck twice that took me out of my job as a political executive and for a bit as a political commentator 4 years ago. And so I have a deepened after being connected and under the care of 9 doctors and practitioners, having my brain compromised from that of an adult to that of a toddler and having to build my way up, walking, talking, and reading again. And so here's what I want to say. I bring all of that to say that I believe that particularly when we find this time that we're in, that there is a real desire to withdraw because everything is very heavy. And I'm saying that to all of us, Peter and Reecie, because I innately and I intimately understand what it feels like to withdraw when the world is turned on its head. That's personal and it's also on a national and global level. And here's where I found the fight to fly. And the fight is not meaning that I put on boxing gloves. It means that there were decisions that I've made throughout the day to reclaim my brain, to reclaim my breath, and to reclaim my body. I want to say that we all have the power to create our own joy, that though these are times that we have not experienced, that these are times that have happened in our history. And the power of actually going from things that we have read in our history books in colleges and high school and things of that nature, what we have read to what we are seeing is all centered around people. It's people making individual decisions every single day about, even if this is something that they have to move through, that they're going to do it in a way that they will be able to say to people that are coming behind them that though these things are happening, you still have reclamation over your joy. So some of the things that I would advise that, listen, celebrate July the 4th because you are still an independent human being. Your celebration may look very different from what other people's celebration looks like, but make that a celebration of you being here in history and that you all are connected, Lemon Nation, Lemon Heads, that you are not recoiling from this moment, that you are still raising and talking and being a part of this collective virtual community. So you have every reason to celebrate. Please celebrate. Number one, celebrate. Make your reasoning for celebrate your own personal reason, but do celebrate. Number two, it sounds very much so counterintuitive to what we're experiencing right now, but gratitude studies have imaged the brain of what the brain looks like when we go on social media and open it up immediately. And then what our brains look like on a brain scan, how neurotransmitters and how the garden of the brain is so much more beautiful when we take time to acknowledge ourselves, Peter and Reecie, and then when we take time to actually speak well over ourselves. So what's happening over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is definitely a leadership of the country, but what's happening at your personal address, meaning where your body is your business. So take time when you wake up in the morning, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, not to immediately hit your cell phone, but take time to set the environment in your body. Take time to express the loveliness, the beauty, the power of who you are. Do that for yourself. Express gratitude. Get up out of the house, even if you're in a chair, if you're on a walker and a cane, whatever your mobility is, and move your body. The third thing to do is when you have opportunity, if you're in an area where there's some grass, get your feet in the grass and ground in the earth. Remember, the earth has been here much longer than the people that are in power right now, and it will be after. So ground with the earth so that you can actually bring yourself back to the reality of you being here. The fourth thing that I would say, and I have one more thing after this, is to center yourself in joy. Turn on some music. Turn it up as loud as you can tolerate it. Dance. You are still here. Activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Give yourself permission to release joy. And the fifth thing that I would say in all of this, in all of what we're doing, in all of what we're seeing, is just like with any storm, just like with any administration or anybody in command, this too shall pass. This is not forever. It is not forever. There's finite time periods. There are eras. We all intelligently know this. This too shall pass. So if you are able to do something in your community to help feed children, to help with Meals on Wheels, to help people that are in communities that are feeling like they're unseen, go out and do that. Studies show that when you actually are involved in other activities that lift other people, that it brings a level of gratitude and it helps your whole body and your wellness. So those are the things that I would add, y'all. This is not forever. And listen, I just also want to say we have won. this bill has passed, but I want to say the fact that there are 800,000 people that are subscribed to this channel, the fact that there's community here, the fact that there's producers and people that are able to make this show go forward, we have won. Continue to win in your own way.
Thank you, Erica. I love to try to end on a more inspirational, encouraging note. There's going to be tons of news coverage, tons of commentary on this that is going to leave us a little deflated. So hopefully, I see all the comments. 5,000 people stuck around to hear some words of encouragement. So thank you all for joining us in Don Lemon's absence, but never absent from our heart. Peter, thank you. Nikki, thank you. Andy, thank you. Y'all can follow me, Reecie Colbert, on all socials. My YouTube channel is Black Women Views Media. My game, I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, is Am I Trippin'? And so if you want to get some fun conversation and trivia, you can pick up my game, amitrippinggame.com. Thank you, Lemon Nation. Lemon Legends, I know it's normally your day. But look, we can't substitute for Don Lemon being here, but he'll be back. And then y'all get y'all time to get up on the big screen. So thank you all for sticking with us. Peter, any last words?
This was great. Erica, thank you so much for that. Everyone in the chat is saying it, but particularly after this conversation, we needed some I don't know, some chicken soup for the soul. And you definitely delivered that. So thank you. And I want to let everyone know that a link to Erica's website is pinned at the top of the chat. So if you click on that, you can go pre-order her book. I know I will. And then the only thing, or I guess two more quick things. One, Reecie, thank you so much for filling in, not just tonight, but this morning too. It's such a pleasure to have you pulling double duty for us. The Lemon Nation loves you. Don, of course, adores you.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'd say is that catch me tomorrow morning, guys, bright and early, 10 a.m. I'm going to be on with a fan favorite, Jay Jordan, the comedian, my friend, your favorite funny man will be on with me. So tune in at 10 a.m.
Thanks, y'all.
Turn the TV off.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.